video will be on Active Directory on a 2019 server and setting it up with DNS. I will go through the steps to show you what to do, and then we'll run through Active Directory to make sure it's set up properly. So we're going to start with some of the prerequisites that we have to do to make sure that this deployment will be successful. First thing we'll start off with is to, which I've already done, is to rename this server to something that you will use in your environment or your corporate location or your office. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to rename this server, which I've already done, but I will go ahead and show you the process. So right clicking on this PC, go to properties, and as you can see, I've already renamed the server. Now I've named it corp-svr1. Now, for if your office is called something else, you would name it, give it a name of your corporate office. SVR1 just means server one. If there's another server, it could be SVR2 in your environment. So before doing this, especially if it's going to be live in your environment, make sure you have a good naming structure before you do this. Simple process. Click on Change Settings, Change, and here is where you will change the name of the server. Now, once you change the name, you go down to OK, you click OK, it's going to go through the process, and then it will ask you to reboot. It will tell you that it's going to reboot, and the server will reboot. So I've already done this process. We're not going to do that anymore. So we're going to close out of this and close out of it here. Let's close this down. And on the bottom, I will show you what needs to be done on your network settings so that this process will go smooth. Right click, open the network settings, and here I'll go to Ethernet, change adapter, and here I have two NICs, I just used one. Right click, properties. Now I've removed IP version 6, it's not needed right now. In the future, I mean, it's been coming for a long time, but it's still not widely implemented in every uh, deployment. So we'll click on IP version 4, properties. And as you can see, I've already pre-filled this section. When the server is first coming up, first server in the environment, it will be set to obtain IP automatically. You're going to change that. And you will click on use the following IP address. Based on the scheme that you have for your office location, it could be 192. I'm using this because it's a lab environment. But if you are the system administrator, you would have already had IP scheme that you'd be using. Default gateway. This is just a random number I gave it. And on your DNS, we're going to use 127.0.0.1. You could have used the same IP here on the bottom, but it's wise to use the 127 IP address. I have Google's DNS on the bottom just because I wanted to get out to the web, but it's not necessary. Okay, and you would click OK. The settings will be applied. You would click OK again, and that's what you would have. So the 127.0.0.1, we're setting this up as our first Active Directory, and we're setting up as our first DNS. So you will need to have that settings. Close out, close this out. So I have Server Manager up already. It comes up once the server is, you log into the server or reboot the server. So let's go ahead and add the role. So here's the wizard. We're going to click next. I'm going to leave it on role based. We're going to click next. And we're going to choose the second option for Active Directory domain services. So we'll click on it. It says here, add features that are required for Active Directory domain services. We're going to leave all this standard, do not make any changes. It's needed for Active Directory. Hit next. We're going to leave this as it is. And we're not doing any Azure setup, so we're going to leave this as it is. It's our lab environment, just to install AD and DNS. Hit next. We're going to click on restart. And it's basically telling you, hey, by doing that, once we're done, we're going to reboot automatically. Okay? Hit yes. And then we're going to install. This process takes about 4 or 5 minutes on my server because I'm not running any SSD drives, so it's not super fast. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. Once it's done, I'll show you the next step in the process. So now it's completed the first phase of the installation. Now we have to promote the server to be a domain controller. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on promote the server. Now it's not joining to an existing domain. And it says here add a new domain to an existing forest. I'm not doing that. And we're going to go ahead and create a new forest. So this is the first one. Picture it being just like they say a new forest, you're going to be the first thing in there. Here I'll put, and this again is based on your environment and what your domain is called or what you're going to call your domain. I'm just, because of this has been a lab environment, I'll call mine corp.local. I'm going to hit next. And there's a few things here. Functioning level is on 2016 already. If you had servers that were domain controllers and they were still on 2012, you'd want to keep this on 2012 so that it functions properly in the environment. But because this is the first server, there's no need to do backward compatibility. We're going to leave both settings 2016. It says here specify domain controller capabilities. So we're going to leave this because we want DNS. We want it to be a global catalog server. And this part is very important. It says here, and if you read it, type the directory service restore mode. So if you had to restore this via backup, if you wanted to do DC promo to bring this back from domain controller, you'd need this password. So once you type this password, don't forget it. Put it in a safe place if you tend to forget things. So don't lose this password. In here, just hit next. And what it's doing now, it's doing is, as you can see from the status bar, it's working. And what it's going to do is to put the NetBIOS name, which is going to be corp, right here. There it goes. Going to hit next. It's doing its thing again. Look in the status bar, you can see it. Now, it's interesting, or it's here, because this is a lab environment. I'm going to leave it here. And about 90% of the time, you do leave it where it is right now. You don't change it. I've only changed this maybe a handful of times, so it's not a big thing to leave it where it's at. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hit next. And this just basically gives you an overview of the settings that you chose to install, so you can review it, look through it, and see if there's anything you want to go back to and make changes. I'm going to hit next. And it's going to pop up it's going to do a prerequisites check, and it's going to pop up some things, some warnings. I already know what's going to come up, but it's not that it won't install. Like here, Windows Server 2019 domain controller. it says have a default for security settings name, and it's basically saying for Windows NT the security level, and you can read through these if you want, but it's not, it won't, you can go ahead, it won't stop the installation. So we're just going to hit install, and you can see the process. It says starting, and it's going to run through different things, and you'll see it here, and it'll tell you some things that it's doing, and more warnings will pop up also. So we just let this do its thing. Once it's done, it's going to reboot, and once it's finished rebooting, I'll go ahead and pause the video and come back, and then we'll check out the environment together, and we'll run through what it looks like for AD and create some users and groups, etc. And there we go. I'm just going to close this to make this faster. And there he goes. I'm going to pause. I'll be back. So guys, this server is back online, and as you can see, server manager dashboard is up, and you can see basically some of the different installations: AD, DNS, file and storage, service. And these are errors which are, if you click on it, it's two of the most common ones, nothing to be worried about. So we're going to move on to verifying that AD was installed. So we'll click on Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers, and we'll just talk about it a little bit, okay? So we're going to make this bigger, open the screen, and as you can see, corp.local was created. User folder, and this cannot be changed, guys. Now, in your environment, in your office environment, you would have already made a structure of what OUs you want to create and what OUs will be nested where. So we're going to do a basic OU structure, and we'll create a couple of users and we'll discuss. So I'll click on the top level, and we're going to go new, and we do organizational unit. I'll call this management. Again, this will be whatever your structure would be. Just don't, because it's a lab environment, it's different. But if this is going to be live, you would have already planned out what your structure would be. So here it says protect container from accidental deletion. I'll hit OK. Now on the management, we'll create other OUs. I could say sales. I could say accounting. Okay. Let's do one more, and we'll do on the top level, and we'll do IT. So let's close this. Now, just take a look at this. When I wanted to create an OU at first, you'd go to the top level, highlight it, click right click, new organizational unit. And I created management and IT that way. However, I created two additional organizational units under management. I right clicked, I highlight management, right click, new organizational unit. So let's create a couple of users. Sales. Highlight sales, right click, new user. We'll just call this one Mary. Oops, sorry. Last name, Brown. And this one, M. Brown. Now, every organization, again, is different based on your structure, how you'd like the naming convention to go. But we're just going to go with first initial, last name in this demo. Next, give it a password. And here, just to discuss, user must change password at next logon. You can do this if someone calls in, hey, I can't log into my system. This is general, you just do a generic password, you give it to them, and then they will change it so you don't know the password. User cannot change password. In today's environment, unless it's like a system account where you do it, but then again, for security reasons, I still don't like it. Or maybe it's for a service that needs that static password, then you do something like that. I don't like it. Password never expires. That's another one, a no-no also. And disable account. So if you're setting up the environments, no one's there yet, and you created a bunch of users, which you wouldn't do with this process because you don't want to create users one by one if it's 100 users. But just say you could disable the account. What you would do in a normal process is create group policies that every 30 or 60 days users are forced to change their password. Now, because we're doing the lab, it doesn't matter in this environment. I'm just going to choose password never expires. Next, finish. Now, this is Mary Brown. She's created. Now, if Mary Brown had special permissions that were added to her account, right? And I don't want to go ahead and have to do that for the next couple of users will have the same permissions. I don't want to have to go ahead and do properties and member off and keep adding. What I would do is to right click, copy, and this will copy all the settings that are on Mary Brown's account. So I can do Paul I'm sorry, Paul Johnson, and it would be P Johnson. Next, we'll give it a password. And again, I'm going to remove this. It's only a user account. And you would hit finish. And then you would populate the accounting and you would populate IT the same way. You'd remember the passwords and you would do it the same way. Now we can create groups too. And let's create in the sales, let's create a group. New group. And we could say sales group. Right? Just sales group. We'll leave it at global and security. And here we can add users to the group. So we'll right click on sales group, members. We'll add Mary, and there's one Mary in there, and there's one Paul. And look, it's all there. Hit OK, and they're added to the group. Now, in another video that I'll do, I'll discuss the reasons for using a group. You can give some member who's a trusted member of the group permissions to handle managing that one group for new user accounts or whoever is switched to a different department, whoever, someone that left. I'll go over another video that will explain this. So both these users are now added to that group. So lastly, that what we'll look at is DNS. Okay, we go back to server manager dashboard, click on tools, DNS. Let's make this bigger. Click on it, open it up, and here we go, Corp. See it? Let's look at a couple of settings here. It's running. We can pause it. Active Directory integrated, secure only, and let's set scavenging on this. Now, scavenging is important. I've seen this in large organization where computers are just left in DNS and they're not removed, and now you have a mess because now you have to track which computers are still there and not there. So this is a good way to set scavenging, which will go ahead and purge those records for you. We'll go and look at our name server, which will have the name of the server in there. And this is if if you had other DNS servers in the environment, you would use something like this, but we don't. And we don't use wins anymore. Now, one thing that we will create is our reverse lookup zone. So we'll click on reverse, new zone. We'll leave it at primary to all DNS servers running in on a domain controller. We're going to use IP version 4. We'll hit next. And let's do it here. 192.168.1. Okay, 1. And we're going to allow only secure. And we'll do finish. And there you have it, guys. It's all created. Uh, what I would suggest on something like this is if you're not sure, you can re-watch the video, or you can go ahead and create, because I'm in a VM environment, you can use your own VM environment, create a Windows 10 workstation, join it to the domain. Look what happens once you join it to the domain. It will show up here in the DNS settings, and just play around. And if you have any questions, leave it in the chat window, and I'll go ahead and respond to you guys. But this, I know it's been a long video, but this is your setup for Active Directory users, Active Directory and DNS.